As a pre-service teacher coming to the end of my final year of university, it's important that I take the time to reflect back on my experiences at PRAC. Walking into my first day of teaching Year 10 English Communications, I thought I could engage my students through my passion for English and sassy memes. My dreams were quickly crushed as the Year 10s tore my memes to pieces and remained disengaged. After a particularly bad lesson, I went home and dreamt of creating a perfect magic potion to get my students to stay engaged. After some research, I came to the conclusion that the first ingredient I needed for this magic recipe was a clear understanding of the types of students I would be teaching. I requested to see the data placemats for Year 10 English Communications. By accessing these placemats, I was able to understand the different levels of learning abilities in my class. By making an effort to understand the class I was teaching, I provided more opportunities for myself to differentiate my teaching to meet the specific learning needs of students across a full range of abilities. An example of this is when I created 3 different types of worksheets for the class. Each worksheet asked the students to complete the same activities, focusing specifically on the same piece of text. The differentiation came in the form of levels of scaffolding on each sheet. Another way I gained information about the class was by getting them to complete an entry slip. At the beginning of the unit, I asked every student to complete the following statements. These statements helped me further develop my relationships with students and create activities and lesson plans that played to their strengths. Although there were some improvements, I still felt that I needed to find some more ingredients to add to my magic potion. I was now on the lookout for methods to help me plan and implement effective teaching and learning strategies. Coming from an exclusively English and English extension teaching background, it was clear that I needed to work hard to adapt my teaching to fit this English communications class. I was still struggling to keep the whole class engaged. After a couple of failed lessons, my prac teacher reintroduced me to the Unsworth model. After using the Unsworth model for a couple of lessons, I reflected back and compared them to earlier ones which did not use Unsworth. It was clear to see that overall my lessons were being disrupted less and the participation in the class had grown. Another benefit of using the Unsworth model was that my learning sequences began to have more structure, and with this structure I was able to manage challenging behaviours. Before using the Unsworth model, I often struggled to keep the whole class engaged, and it was this disengagement that led to disruptive behaviours. With its implementation in my classroom, it was hard not to notice a big difference in behaviour. After a couple of weeks, my students were moving closer and closer towards what I thought were well-engaged students. With a splash of reflective practice, a sprinkling of understanding of how my students learned, and a pinch of implementing effective teaching and learning practices and models, the creation of a perfect formula was getting closer every day. The perfect potion was within my reach, but I felt I still had some room to grow. In an effort to improve my practice, I set about attending every PD session that was available to me. It was through these PD sessions that I found the last magical ingredient, a mentor. My supervising teacher had provided me with pages of useful feedback, but oftentimes she was caught up in preparing her own classes. During a behaviour management PD, I met an older teacher who agreed to become a secondary avenue of feedback. A fresh pair of eyes allowed for a wider range of feedback, giving me a greater opportunity to refine my teaching practice. She also became a shoulder I could cry on and a second opinion when I needed one. With all my ingredients assembled, I began to formulate my perfect potion. By combining the perfect amounts of professional knowledge, professional practice, and professional engagement, my once disengaged class's eyes lit up. They stopped tearing my memes apart and started participating in class without my prompting. Just like any normal magic potion, its powers would wax and wane depending on the strength of the force pushing against it, which in this case was my students' behaviour and disengagement. If Harry Potter taught me anything, it was that magic comes from within. The foundations for a positive improvement for not only my class, but for me as a teacher had been laid. I knew deep down that I didn't need any magic. As long as I abided by the standards and stayed passionate, I would be a successful teacher.
Created using Powtoon.